What's going on, y'all? Welcome to 8 Cubes. I'm KM Best. He is Lamby Series. We are here to talk about the 8 most important topics in Marvel Snap. We actually moved this video so that we could do like an instant patch reactions type thing. Turns out that's going to be a lot less lifting than we expected because there are no balance changes in the patch at all. There are some bug fixes and some changes to like cosmetic things, which I think are very cool or whatever, but they're not really what we talk about on either of our channels. We talk about balance changes. So what I wanted to start with was, what is your reaction to there being no balance changes and the thought process behind it?
Okay, so I honestly am very shocked. Like there's not a lot of things that shock me when it comes to changes, but I think what shocked me was the fact that it was zero. Like I am pretty sure there are cards that okay, it's not so much about nerfs because I feel like the meta is in a good place right now. I kind of really like the meta right now. Like you can play like kind of a lot of things. I mean, Loki is popular, yes, but you can really play a lot of things right now, right? So not so much things need to be like nerfed, but I felt like there's about like 100 or so other cards that could be buffed to like, because like they did the Snow Guard change, which was fantastic, right? They did the Spider-Man change, which was fantastic, right? Like there's so many cards that are either like could be changed or are really bad and could be buffed, that could be buffed, but it wasn't buffed. So I was just a bit surprised that like there were no buffs. Nerfs I don't really care for right now, but I'm very surprised that there are like no buffs.
Yeah, I will say for my part, I felt as though it made sense for this to be a patch with no changes in the sense of like, I can't think of anything that's like, okay, we got to deal with that in a way that a patch could have dealt with it. By that, I mean like these patches tend to get locked in pretty far ahead of time.
Mm-hmm.
And this meta was sort of new in that context, right? Like, this is not a situation where this is an OTA that is reacting to last week's meta. This is like a patch that is reacting to last month's meta.
Mm-hmm.
And I think this is so different from last month's meta and genuinely is a good metagame that I think that that does make sense as a reason for why that would not happen. It's the kind of thing that you just kind of wish was communicated a little better, though. Like the patch notes don't have anything saying, hey, we think the meta is good, so we're not making any changes and we like it. And we did a OTA 5 days ago, which we thought was really good, and there's some stuff on our radar, but we're happy to wait for the next OTA to get more data on it. Like, that would be a totally acceptable statement that just wasn't made. And it just is sort of weird that they didn't even, do that, right? I also think that I agree with you. There's a lot of cards that you could buff, but there's less that you would want to buff. I don't know if you've ever gone through it, but there's a lot of cards that sort of fall into the Black Widow trap for me, where it's like, yeah, you could buff this. Everyone would hate it, but you could do it. And I do think that I want to encourage people to leave in the comments below if you have a card that you think can get buffed, please leave it in the comments below. But keep in mind, we don't necessarily want to be in the business of making new Black Widows. So if you're like, oh, I think they can buff Master Mold, it's like, they can, but should they? Very different question, right? And so I wanted to give that call to action in the comments and also just ask people to, like, let me know what you think about this. Because I think Lamby and I, neither of us are overly concerned with a patch that comes without
Yeah.
changes, right? When we like the metagame, I think we're just like, yeah, okay, that's fine. Meta's fun. I'm enjoying exploring, right? There's nothing wrong with that. Do balance changes when you need to do balance changes. But I don't know if that's true for everyone. And I suspect that there's a large contingent of players in Marvel Snap who are like, no, I was promised consistent changes here. That is what I am here for, right? It's a big win because Marvel Snap can do that. Do you feel as though this is something they have to do in the future? Do you feel like any patch without these kind of changes would be undesirable? Or, as someone noted in one of my previous hot takes video, do you think they should actually, focus on like fixing bugs and raising performance and stuff like that? And you're okay if balance patches end up taking a little bit of a backseat as long as they're actually getting things done in that way? Let me know in the comments. So, with that said, I mean, let's proceed with the normal order of the episode. Valentina is out, a 2/3 that creates a random 6-drop in your hand and gives it -3 power and -2 cost. I have a theory about this card that it will make a bunch of people play Loki, and then they'll be like, oh my god, look at my win rate with Valentina. And it's like, that's just going to be Loki. Where do you think about Valentina, both on her own and in the Loki shell?
Right, so we addressed the Loki thing first, which is I feel firstly you're right. It will make there'll be a spike in Loki gameplay just because she obviously fits in Loki cause random generation, right? And like I do think that the card that she randomly generates, I'm on the side whereby I think it's gonna be more useful than not useful. Plus, like I mean, many 6 cost cards that cost 4 have a certain level of use case, and even if it's useless, well, Loki it all away. Random generation. I mean, I guess one thing that she could do in Loki builds is maybe reintroduce collector back into the builds just because there's one more thing that generates a card. So that's something you could consider. But I think she's quite naturally a card that you want to play in Loki. I do want to talk specifically about the card itself though. Like I am actually quite like a big fan of this Valentina card. I've made no secret that I think this card is good because like you can play her in okay, so firstly she's a 2/3, right? Like 2/3 stat line is great for a 2 cost card, and she literally fills up your your turn 4 with like a 6 cost card, which sometimes is Doctor Doom, sometimes it's unplayable. But if it's not Doom or unplayable, it's probably in the spectrum of somewhere in between where it could be like decent. I mean, now you get like a red hound, you get like a she hound, you get like I don't know, something decent that you can play on turn 4 is fine. Like I can see her being played in Hope Summers decks just because. But yeah, no, I'm really very generally positive about this card. I think she will definitely see play in Loki. I personally will be trying to play her in like other random decks just to see whether she fits. I think she will. What do you think?
My theory of this card is that it is going to be a likely minor upgrade from Cable and Mirage that people will then blame when Loki has like a 30% play rate, right? Like, I think coming into this card being released, Loki is already probably the best deck. And that is
Mhm.
true for a variety of reasons, most of which have to do with metagame positioning, because these Annihilus, Cannonball, Profex decks are here to beat up on combo decks. The decks that actually beat Loki are just sort of out the window right now. And that means that it's time for everyone's least favorite green man to come back in and do a lot of damage. The meta is primed for this card to succeed in Loki. The real question is, how much of an upgrade is it going to be? And I think over an average 4-drop, Valentina is not going to give you something that's that good that often. But over an average 3-drop, almost every one of the cards she's going to give you is good. So Quinjet Valentina starts becoming like a very, very powerful thing to do. I will say one other thing. I suspect that the Luke Cage stuff that people are cooking up with this card is cope. Unless Luke Cage is good elsewhere, I suspect that running Luke Cage to get rid of the negative power on the Valentina card is just not going to be worth doing.
Oh
That's
wait,
where I'm at with her.
the funny thing is that when you mentioned that to me, it's just like that's not even a consideration in my brain. That's just not gonna work 100%. But like that's
Yeah.
just me. I'm just like I
No,
just
like it's
don't
it,
think that makes
it's not. It's not going to work,
it
right?
doesn't
But
make
like
sense to me at all.
people are talking about it, right?
Okay.
And so we got to talk about it. Okay,
Okay.
Lamby, rub it in
Okay.
a little
Okay.
more. Why
Okay.
don't
To
you?
me, it doesn't make sense at all. I'm sorry, that's a bit funny. But like anyway, so Quinjet Valentina into like 4 cost, 3 cost, 6 drop, and then Loki is kind of disgustingly strong, right? Like, yeah, so like just having Quinjet Valentina into like her 6 drop is I think it's also a snap condition, which is
Yeah.
fun. You don't have to hit Loki on 4 now. You have a power spike that's kind of crazy by turn 3, and then you go from there, right? So I think one more thing I'm very curious about is like with this Valentina inclusion, other than collector, does it change the builds a bit? Will we ever go back to like a Miss Marvel-ish kind of thing? Because technically introducing like a cheaper 6 cost card is still a 6 cost card. So it doesn't really you can play it like and then play
Yeah.
Miss Marvel and stuff like that. So kind of interesting. I'm down to see where this card takes us.
You know what else it does though is that's a created card for Mockingbird.
Oh yeah.
There's just a lot of like, okay, this is like probably an
True.
upgrade in Loki. Like, this is a pretty good thing to be doing.
True.
And I swear to God, if I see anyone saying like Valentina made Loki broken, I'm gonna blow like what's the word for like the nerves in your brain? I'm gonna have an aneurysm. I'm gonna
Aneurysm.
blow a blood vessel, all right? Like it's gone. I am gonna lose it if I see anyone saying Valentina made Loki broken. I swear to God. So let's get to the depressing downside of Valentina, which is almost all of these cards that have come out recently have been very good and have had play rates north of 20% in top end infinite, right? I would estimate that this is going to happen for Valentina. And by the same token, she has such an obvious home and such an obvious good deck that we have to reckon with the reality of the fact that there's just going to be a ton of Loki for the next week or so. And I feel exactly like the emote that I use to represent my feelings here. It's just I feel sad and depressed on an existential level. Like, I like playing Loki, but I get why people don't. And I guess my question here is like, all right, let's say you are presumably every member of my audience based on my comments, and you hate Loki. What do you want to do? What do you play?
Wow. Okay, honestly, okay, so this is probably not a counter to Loki per se, but recently there was a bounce deck that did really well and won a tournament, the Snap Judgments Grand Prix. I'm someone that likes to play bounce into Loki simply because like they need to steal like a very specific thing in the Iron Man. If not, they don't really get to keep up with your like generation of power from like the early turns until the final turn, right? And like your burst of power and all that. So like I personally like to play bounce into Loki. The other thing is that like that there was this period of time whereby the Loki mirrors were getting out of hand, that like some of the Korean players like Johnson and Desmond, they were just literally playing Loki decks with trash. Like their Loki decks
Yes,
literally had
I remember
yeah, it was
that.
Mantis Cable Mirage Loki deck. So if you Loki them, you have certain useful things, like I guess maybe gladiators and the Valentina or whatever. But like when they Loki you, they get mantises and cables. Like I don't think that is like a very foolproof way of doing it. But like it's definitely one thing to consider making their Loki's trash. And of course, oh, I mentioned this in the previous like Valentina topic, which is I think if it's gonna be a Loki versus Loki world, we wouldn't go back to a Miss Marvel game plan, because if they steal your
Yeah.
Miss Marvel, it's really kind of horrendous. So I think we might go down back to small ball Loki, whereby you have like small amounts of like powerful cards. Like Angela just grows over time, but not just like singular cards that can be stolen and just change the game. So maybe Gladiator stonks down, maybe like Dinosaur stonks down, Miss Marvel stonks down. But in terms of Loki Mirror, I guess you play like the Angela stuff, the Elsa stuff, and then maybe you go a little bit in the direction of doing some Cable Mantis stuff. I don't know, but like in the vein of like not basically giving them the best deals of your life. So I guess that's I technically just covered the Loki mirror, but like I'm pretty sure there are still other decks you can play, like Phoenix
That's so
Force.
sick, man.
Phoenix
You,
Force.
we were like Lamby, what do we play into Loki? And you were like, here's how to win the Loki mirror.
Because I expect it so much. Like I think my streams will be a lot of me playing Loki decks that win Loki decks. So like this is just me
Mhm.
going through what I think I'll end up doing. Also
I mean,
Phoenix
here
Force,
I was
yes.
gonna say,
Phoenix
yeah, I
Force.
was gonna say Phoenix Force. I was gonna say Phoenix Force and Hela, right?
Hella okay, yeah.
Hela whips Loki. Like, that is not a
Different.
close matchup. That is just like the Loki deck sits there and looks at you while you do your stuff, and then they just hope you don't do your stuff, right? Like, that is.
Seen the craziness that the Loki thing can do. I can Loki you with like a 6-card hand, then I randomly discard the black cat I just got, then I go Blade Hella. It's actually quite
Okay.
disgusting. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah.
It
If you
happens a
if you
lot.
super nut off, you can beat it, but I don't think you're doing that reliably. And yeah, Phoenix Force is probably the best position combo deck right now
Yes.
because of the like Annihilus Cannonball soup stuff. It's the only one that can really try to adapt to that. Like Mr. Negative just dies, Living
Yep.
Tribunal just dies, Hela has a lot of trouble with Professor X. And so you end up in this spot where like PF is the only deck that can really survive both of those matchups. So it's possible we end up in a PF, or not necessarily PF oriented meta, but in a metagame where PF is a good choice. So let's talk about Cannonball Soup. And what I mean by that is there are just like 10 decks right now that are just like, yeah, okay, I'm going to like do some stuff that is some points. Then I'm going to play Profx Cannonball. And it's just like, whatever flavor of that you feel like doing, it's probably good. I have tried a bunch of different decks. I have not been able to figure out if any of them are better than anything else, because what they're all doing on a baseline level is just really good. Profx Cannonball is the new Profx Goliath, right? So what does it take to beat these decks? I think Loki is pretty good into them, which means we could be seeing a decrease in Cannonball Soup because of the fact that, like, Loki, it's going to get your cards. You're going to have a bunch of bad things to Professor X. They're going to have your Cannonball. It's kind of difficult to deal with all the stuff they can do. They're able to win multiple lanes. But I do think that it's pretty likely that Cannonball Profx stuff remains a compelling and powerful part of the metagame. What are your thoughts on just Cannonball generally and the decks being built around him?
So I think Cannonball Soup needs to exist to keep this a healthy metagame. So that's quite interesting, right? This is my take. I think it actually needs to exist because like, yes, Cannonball Soup is effectively your previous Thanos deck, whereby when Lokis you get all these singularly powerful big things that you don't want to be stolen but end up getting stolen, right? Because like it's like 4-cost cannonballs, 4-cost profs and stuff like that. So like you don't want to get Loki'd by this thing. But I feel like the fact that Prof X Cannonball is in the meta is also holding back the Wombo combo decks from like 3 weeks ago from going crazy, and those stuff actually kinda impacts Loki's win rate for sure. So like is this like dog eat dog world scissors paper stone thing, rock paper scissors thing, whereby I feel like this cannonball stuff needs to exist. And hopefully the players playing the cannonball stuff don't queue into so much Loki, and then they can sort of survive a bit. Because like if the cannonball stuff completely disappears, right, the Loki win rate also. I mean, it depends. If you guys hate Loki, then yeah, you kind of want the cannonball stuff to disappear too, so that the combo decks can become a thing again, and then the Loki play rate will go down, right? So it's like it's a cycle. It's really just a cycle.
I don't think they accomplish this in a way that is like particularly fun to play against, right?
Yeah.
Where it's like this is your like, you know, it's your Prophex Eliath, it's your like Leech Leader. It's like they don't accomplish it in a particularly fun way, but I do think when you grade them on the curve of Prophex Eliath, Thanos, Leech Leader, like previous decks that have held this role, I think this is by far the most fun version of those. And like it's a really low bar, but I do think it's by far the most fun and dynamic version of that kind of deck that we've had.
Yeah. Can I just say one thing though, that like, okay, I just want to know what you guys think in the comments as well, but like let me just pitch my whole point and then we can just end it there, because it's just my opinion. But like, so Cannonball is like a very, very popular and good 5-cost card right now. I 100% agree.
Oh god, I know where this is going.
But I still think Vision is the best 5 in the game right now. It's less played, yes, but okay, I'm not gonna like discuss it, but my answer is this, because Vision, like what it used to do in Thanos, Vision turns games from like 50-50s into 33%ers or 66%ers. So I feel like Vision is still the better overall card. But Cannonball is more popular now, yes. Alright, that's it.
I don't even know if Cannonball is the best 5, but it's not Vision. I can tell you that for
Vision
sure.
Yeah, but yeah, okay, sure.
Okay, no, I'm gonna pick this back up. You think Vision is better than Annihilus?
Okay, probably not.
Probably not. Thank you.
Okay, probably not.
No way.
I think Vision's better than Cannonball, but not Annihilus. Okay, let's get into Annihilus and why he's probably the scariest 5-drop right now, KM. Why is Annihilus the scariest 5-drop right now? Let us know.
Because sending over the Hood and Sentry is very, very good. I don't really know what else to say. Like, there are so many decks that are just like, you know, we can do what our deck is trying to do, what our archetype is trying to do, like, or we could just play Annihilus Sentry in the Hood. Yeah. It's just like, that's just such an insane thing to do, where it's like, we have people who are playing Destroy decks with no Deadpool and no Null, because instead of investing in Deadpool and Null, it's just better to play Annihilus Sentry Hood.
Wait, there's Annihilus Sentry Hood in Destroy?
Yes, KX has been playing that. It's a real thing. KX and Mickey are like in the top 50 with that. Torikun was playing it. It's real. Like we've gone past.
Yeah. There's death as well, right? There's a death in there.
Yes. We have gone past the Annihilus event horizon to the point where it's like if I rolled up to a discard player and they had Annihilus Sentry in their deck, I'd be like, sure, man, why not? Like we have passed the point of no return with this card. And I think that, you know, there are things that really balance it out. Like, for example, Daredevil Professor X sniping that Sentry lane is a real weak point in it. But I think the sort of consistency that the deck has in minimizing its weaknesses, right? There are no longer decks that are just running Annihilus Sentry, and that's the only way we have to get rid of stuff. They all have either a Carnage or a Lady Deathstrike. They have all of this backup stuff too. So even when they're not doing the stupid thing, they're doing something that is generally over the rate of what you would expect. And I think that that is really what has beefed Annihilus up. It's not even necessarily himself. It's this combination of other powerful 5-drops, right? You have, you know, Annihilus decks that are leveraging Professor X, right? You have Annihilus decks that are leveraging Cannonball. And Annihilus is a deck that is very able to concentrate its power into certain locations, clog you up, have that location won. Whether or not you're using Professor X or Annihilus to accomplish it, Annihilus is just the higher power option. And so you have this situation where it's like, this is probably the best card in the game. Are we sure he's doing things that are bad to the metagame, though? Where it's like, is this guy helpful? helping or hurting the gameplay experience, I think is my question.
Actually, I don't actually know the answer to this, but what I know is that I actually like what is happening right now. Like the fact that we can go Annihilus Hood Sentry into like multiple decks. I mean we've always had this like small junk package thing going on since Annihilus came out. It was in bounce for a period, right? And then now it's like in
Yep.
everything. I like the fact that you can play in everything right now. Like I like this package. I really like this package because this package also incentivizes Lady Deathstrike. Like this Lady Deathstrike card, I feel like has been so unplayed until this like sort of buff. And like now with the buff, she sees play in like so many things, and like her effect is like super relevant. Like you hit a lot of things. Like in the Loki deck, you hit most things except the Loki. You hit Jeffs, you hit Elsa's, big deal by the way. You hit like a lot of cards, and I feel like just having that one extra way to pop the sentry just makes it so that you can really just play Annihilus Sentry Hood in many different decks because you run the Death Strike that also just lets you pop a bit if the Annihilus itself, like you said, doesn't see play, right? The whole package just is allowed to be played in multiple things right now. So I feel like I like it. I really like this style of deck. And like we mentioned a bit earlier, like some of the higher level players on ladder. I think I finally know what deck you're talking about because I've seen it so much, but I haven't actually tried it yet, which is they play Death, they play like even Mysterio, they play Mockingbird, and then they just like basically win the Annihilus Sentry matchup because they have like bigger and more stuff. And yeah,
Yes.
so
It's anti-clog. It's literally just like, if you're playing Annihilus Sentry, I beat you.
yeah.
That's it. That's like the whole logic. And I do think that's like okay, we may have gone too far here, right? Because like I tend to think that this stuff is like fine enough, but for too long it gets boring, right? And this sort of brings us back to topic number one, which is they didn't do anything in this patch. And I think that, you know, in the abstract, I object to that because I don't want things to get boring. In the specific, though, they did do a patch like 5 days before it, right? I get why they wouldn't do it, but I do sort of wonder if it's so hard to do a balance change in a patch, right? If the patches are like so out of sync with the current metagame that there's not even a point in doing it, and the real balance stuff comes from OTAs, what's the point of doing balance changes in patches in the first place? That's sort of something that I've been thinking about, right? Because it's like, if that's how it is, then why don't we just always do balance in OTAs and get rid of this, like, you know, 4 weeks ago patch from 4 weeks ago that shows up to do something kind of thing? I don't know. I feel like that might be an upside play.
Yeah, I actually have a hot take though. Like, I don't think this might be the reason why they just didn't like put any changes in this patch. But like, I also don't think it's because like I've been away from the game for a little bit. But I look at this meta right now, right? And like in the last 3 weeks, like you know, there's been so many changes in the meta in the last 3 weeks. Like every week or less than a week, it's like a big change from combo to like Annihilus small stuff package to the Loki again, and then to like now Annihilus Death Strike in everything, the Cannonball thing. This whole thing was 3 weeks of like Marvel Snap. So I honestly think that it's super hard to get like a nerf right now because like in the last 3 weeks the meta moved like what 5-6 times, which is mad, right? So it's exciting but it's also crazy. So I wouldn't be I wouldn't want to be the person that like has to decide like, oh my god, I need to nerf something perfectly right now. I don't want to be that guy because in the last 3 weeks the meta changed faster than 3 months, man.
Yeah, I mean, that's what getting rid of Thanos will do for you.
Yeah. Oh my god, yes. It's really just because Thanos disappeared, isn't it?
Yes, it is. It is actually just because Thanos disappeared, right? Like we're in a situation where everything is fluid, everything is moving, and I do understand that if you're like someone who works at Second Dinner and you're like the impulse is like, well, everything's dope right now. We don't want to mess this up. That makes sense to me, but I feel like again, it's like, why isn't that in the notes?
Yeah.
Like, why not just be like, yo, we think the meta is dope and cool and keeps rotating and moving, and that's cool. You can say that. I think that's acceptable.
I think the meta is legit dope and cool right now. Like you,
yeah,
it's so fluid. Like you can do anything.
So because I am generally a psycho, right? I don't enjoy playing mirrors too much. I don't enjoy playing combo decks too much. If I want to try to beat Loki, it's going to be with Mobius and Mobius and some mid-range type stuff. So what would you recommend were I to come to you with this problem? Be like, Lamby, I don't want to play PF and Hela. I don't want to play Loki mirrors. I want to play Mobius. What can I do?
Okay, the funny thing is I don't even like this card. I never liked Mobius as a card because it was a 3/3. I feel so horrible playing a 3/3 in my deck. It's like why I don't like Cosmo as well, because it's just a 3/3. But okay, that's not the point. I'm pretty sure there's upsides to playing Cosmo and Mobius here and there. But like, okay, so I actually do have a legit deck. Like I
Okay.
was thinking about this, right? And we did the C-ball topic a bit earlier. I feel like we just play
Yeah.
Mobius in the C-ball deck. Like, I don't know which C-ball deck, but like because the Mobius the Loki decks farm the C-ball decks. The C-ball decks keep combo in check. So if you don't want your C-ball deck to get farmed by Loki that hard, then you put the Mobius in the C-ball deck. I think that's like my first instinct, because I'm pretty sure in that Cannonball deck, which we just said has like so many different shells, you surely can find a place for a Mobius in there, right? So like I really think that's one good place to start. I mean, obviously, if you don't want to talk about Loki mirrors, I still have to, because I think Loki mirrors will be very prevalent. You can very easily get ahead of your opponent by playing the Mobius before they start to realize they should be playing the Mobius. Like, if you don't want to be cool, or you don't want to be special, or you don't want to be like 6,000 tokens poorer, and you don't want to experiment with Valentina, when everybody's trying out the Valentina, you just cut one card, put Mobius instead of the Valentina, and I think you will still be ahead of the curve in the mirrors. I mean, obviously, you can find a way to fit both Valentina and Mobius, but like, I'm just saying, if you had to choose between Valentina or Mobius in the next 3 days, I think I'll still pick Mobius, because the mirrors are relatively difficult to play if one side has Mobius, right?
I mean, he also just beats Valentina heads up.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's like he comes down on 3 and you're looking at this, like, 9
Unplayable
power
stick.
Magneto in your hand.
Yeah.
You're just like, okay, that sucks.
Yeah.
Let's talk about ongoing. It's been reintroduced to the metagame by TLSG, then Yo Woody made a couple changes and made a good run towards the top of the leaderboard with it. Ongoing as a deck, unfortunately, I think is about to have its legs chopped out from under it, because, and maybe this isn't true because it can incorporate Mobius, right? You can do that, and that will be necessary. But right now, the ongoing builds are these like Jean Grey centric things that are really aimed at beating up on like Cannonball and Annihilus type stuff, where like what's happening is basically like you force them to play the Sentry into the Jean Grey lane, then you Cosmo the Annihilus, which they are also forced to play into the Jean Grey lane. You have like a Cosmo for Cannonball, which actually that is an interaction that people have not been paying enough attention to, because a lot of the Cannonball decks are very much trying to throw priority, then play Cannonball to win another lane. Cosmo absolutely ruins that. He's in a good spot right now. Like, this is a deck that has tools to compete with the metagame. And if it includes Mobius, maybe it even has tools to compete with Loki. But the issue that I find with Loki in this matchup is that you are playing like, US Agent, you are playing Man-Thing, and you are playing Luke Cage. So if there is a world where you are forced to Mobius instead of doing one of those things, right? If there's that world, you're doing that instead of Jean Grey. Awful, that really sucks. You're doing that instead of any of that other stuff. That sucks. But more than that, your opponent playing Loki has a chance at getting your own Luke Cage. And even if you Mobius it, that's still really, really bad for you. They have a chance of getting your Luke Cage. They have a chance of getting your Cosmo. And so it's like, yes, you Mobius it, but also our deck is running the counters to our deck. And so even if we're not in a situation where we are able to 100% deal with their stuff, like, you have stuff, right? You can go like get priority, Jean, Cosmo the Jean lane. They play Loki in there. You got them, right? Like, you can do that. You have lines, but boy, the second they play that card, the second that card's ability happens, you are in trouble.
Yeah, I just want to say, so I don't have much experience with this deck, but I've seen it around. But this is one of those decks that, to me, I like it just feels like the term that I like to use, just feels like a very cute deck. Like, it feels like you're trying very hard to do a very specific, oh, let me play my Cosmo and Jean in the lane so that they have to hella their thing. But this kind of very, like, you gotta do the thing kind of decks, like, it just doesn't work. I feel like it has to do that very specific thing, and it's not like doing that specific thing gives you a power spike. Doing that specific thing gives you a control, which is not really a lot of points. So like, I don't know, man. I just want to ask, is this deck really like doing anything in the meta? Like,
yeah, no, I mean, like, it's kind of good. Like, it's definitely better than ongoing ever has been. I can tell you that.
okay,
sure.
fine.
Like, but like, that's sort of a testament to just how much you can do in a metagame when Thanos isn't like ruining it, right?
True.
You can do. There's just a lot of stuff you can do, and it's like, this deck, it has been quite solid, I think, actually. And I think a lot of that is down to like the power of some of the tech cards, right? Like you have the ability to force specific plays and counter those specific plays. And there are decks that are not built to deal with that. I think a lot of it is down to this is a good home for Cosmo, and Cannonball decks are very much trying to throw Prio into Cannonball. Like there's a bunch of stuff that this deck does well, I think, actually. So let's talk about a wish list. After all of this, is there anything that you want to see in, let's say, the next OTA? The next, like, if you're saying, you know what, we like the metagame right now, we think it's good, we understand why there wasn't a patch change. Do you think that's going to be true in 2 weeks, or are you foreseeing some potential changes in the future?
But I do think like okay, so I this is very interesting because I did sing a lot of praises to the Annihilus entry package a bit, right? Like above. Actually, I sang a lot of praises about it. But like I do think that Annihilus itself as a card can like just drop a power, like just drop a power. Like
Yeah.
it's gonna be obviously a nerf because you drop a power, but it's not gonna like stop the card from being like played at all. Trust. But I do think this card will still be like a relevant card if you just drop a power from Annihilus, and I think you should. Another thing that I want to say is like I want to buff. I feel like I really like it when they like buff cards. Like I'm not like I'm a fan of like more things becoming more powerful than like stuff becoming way worse, you know. So like I want to see buffs. I don't really know what in particular, but is there a world that we like since we just talked about ongoing, right? Is there a world where we actually make Captain America good? A world we make Punisher
No.
good? No.
No.
I mean like they could make them do 3-8 the gladiator worth of stats easily, right? Like
if you made them a gladiator worth of stats, it would be like what, 3-4?
3-4, even 3-5, honestly.
3-5? I don't think. I think going to 3-5 with upside would have to encompass like redoing a lot of stuff.
Okay, 3-4,
right?
3-4.
I think you could be like, this is better Cyclops in the early game, and do it like that. Maybe like you could talk me into that for Cap or for Punisher. I'm sure. I'll tell you, I thought you were gonna go a different way with the ongoing thing. You know what card I want to see get buffed? Claw. Claw should have like 2 more power. Just straight up. Should be like a 5-6.
So now it's 4+. Now it's a 10 power card, right? Now it's like a 4+6, right? So you want to make it a 12?
Yeah, it's 5 energy. What are we talking about here?
But 12 is kind of a bit much, no? Like Vision is 8.
I don't know. Is that like better rate than like we're talking about like a game that has Devil Dinosaur, a game that has Ronan the Accuser, a game that has just like a ton of really good cards. They just did Cannonball, who's like a 5 infinity half the time you play him. Like I just don't understand why that would be bad. It's like I'm into it. I think you could be like a 5-6+6, at least a 5-5+6.
Haven't thought of like the specifications, but what if Claw instead of just straight up being like maybe 5-5+6, what if it's like 5-3+8? That's interesting, isn't it? Like
that feels like that's a more interesting card, but it also feels less fun to play.
Why? Why is it less fun?
Because I think a lot of the fun of Claw is you get to contest 2 locations. And so if you like drop his power down, it's basically like this becomes closer and closer to like White Tiger, but you know where it's going all the time.
Yeah.
And it's like I feel like I want him to be a body and then like a Doctor Doom.
Like 2 bodies, right?
Yeah, that's sort of where like the thought I would have with this guy. We're just like, yeah, that makes sense. You could also just be like, you know, you could make him like a 4 cost, right? He's like a 5-4, right? You could just be like a 4-4+6.
Yeah, that makes sense because Zabu's no longer present. Yeah, so I think you can drop it down to a 4.
Do
like what? Like 4-9 total, or still like 4+6 on the side?
You could do 4-9. You could do 4-10. I think either of those fine. Because like you look at Miss Marvel and you're just like, what are we doing here, right? Like it's a tough spot. I think Annihilus is a card that should get a nerf. I don't really know how, but they should do something about that. I think you could take 2 power off Cannonball and he would still be good.
Yeah, okay, true. But I think it's probably gonna go 5-7 though, like Black Bolt.
Yeah, maybe. I think you could take 2 power off him. I do think it is kind of an accomplishment that they finally made one of these cards, like a Cannonball, like where it's like, you know, the comparisons are like Arrow and Eliath, that doesn't super suck. But again, really low bar for like this kind of card to get across. And I think that maybe with time, people will learn to be as angry with Cannonball as they are with the other 2. We'll see. And obviously, I'd want to avoid that and like maybe knock him down a peg or 2. But I could be All right, y'all. Thank you so much for making it to the end of that video. I know we had some issues with pixelation today. I'm
Yeah.
not really sure what's up with that. I don't exactly know. I'm going to absolve myself of all responsibility and blame Lamby because that's how things work around here. If this were on his show, of course, it would be entirely my responsibility and not his fault at all. But since this is on my channel, that's how this works. Thank you so much for watching. I've been Cam Best. He's been Lamby Series, and we will see you in the next one. Lamby, take us out.
All right, thank you so much for being here. We hope you liked what you just saw. If you wanna follow us on our channels, please do a like, follow, subscribe, and we will see you guys in the next one. See you guys. Bye bye.